Hello, everyone. I'm working in my studio today. This is for the benefit of those of you doing the February the 8th Sunday semi-abstract class. I just want to talk you through doing some preliminary pieces. As mentioned in the details to you, looking at the artist Joan Eardley. Eardley spelled Eardley. I want to be as quick as I can. I don't want to take up too much of your time because hopefully I'll see you on Sunday. But as you know, doing preparatory sketches is very important. So I want to take a close look at this painting, one of Joan's, first of all. Okay, so I'll just go to screen share. Good. So it should be up on your screens now. And let's just take a closer look at it then. Clearly, it's a winter scene. This is probably up near the fishing village at Cataline, up on the east coast of Scotland. I won't tell you too much about Joan's biography because you can look that up quite quickly. But she lived for some of the time in an old fisherman's cottage, so this is close by. It's a wintry scene, and so first of all, I got inspired by this one, but I got others that I rather like doing as well. And I wanted to capture something of the essence of this particular subject. If we look more closely at it, it's a snow-laden sky, isn't it? And of course, we've got a fall of snow here. But the first thing to resist is just plainly copying it. I want to do my own version. As I've just mentioned, I want to do it quite quickly because most of you now know the technique. So I'm having a little think what to do, and I want to create really something of a setting sun. Okay, so clearly there's the horizon way off in the distance. These structures here, I think, were probably winter haystacks. Okay, maybe a couple more there. So if we come down a little bit more, I've decided not to include this sort of bush and possibly not the gate, because remember, I want to work semi-abstract towards abstraction. In the sky, I'm going to put in a sunset. This section here, where the cursor is, I presume to be a lake, hence the reflections here. So I'm going to include the lake. But as I mentioned, I'm going to take out the hedge and the fence. So I'm going to sort of minimize the composition somewhat. I will retain, I think, this line of trees here, plus these on the horizon. And essentially, that's it. It's the layers of paint. I'm giving a sense of perspective going off into the distance. So just to emphasize, I'm going to turn this section here into a setting sun, which in turn will be reflected in the lakeside, in the lake. Okay, so if we come off that. Right, here we go. So I've got this at hand. Now, what I've already done, I partitioned up my paper. I'm using lining paper, and this is about 20 inches by 20 inches, and I partitioned it up to 4 sections, 1, 2, and 2 more below. I could have partitioned it more or whatever, but I want to keep this as simple as possible. I'm going to use, instead of paint, or indeed charcoal, some water-soluble pastels. Here they are, water-soluble. I've not used them before. I've done a little test on them, so just to show you how they work. A bit of paper. So let's take the red, for example. And to all intents and purposes, this acts as like any pastel, but these are waxable ones, waxable, but they're soluble. Now I take a brush with some water, and there we go, works quite nicely. Okay, so I'm going to use these here. Here they are again. Water-soluble oil pastel. Well, wax pastels, not oil. It says on the box. There we go. Water-soluble wax pastels. I've had them a long time. I've not used them before. So very quickly then, I've got the subject, the image close by for me to refer to. And remember, these are preparatory images. So if I put a high horizon line, okay, the high horizon line across there, I'll indicate some trees, the trees as I mentioned. Go on, the sun. I'm not quite sure how to put the sun in, whether to put a disc to represent the sun or just a paint. Well, I'm doing several, aren't I? So there we go. The setting sun. Then I come down to the lake. So remember, these are just preliminary sketches to work out the idea in a bit more detail. This is the lake here. And I'll put in sort of the edge of the field here. But as mentioned before, I'm not going to bother with the bushes. So I want to keep the structure very minimal. So I can take this semi-abstract preliminary work into something perhaps total abstraction. And essentially I got it. All right, yeah, I did mention, you see here I'm in two minds already. Do I put in those haystacks? On this one I will. I'll put them in. I'll put them in on this one. And maybe a couple over here and leave it at that. So I got a basic composition because, as I keep mentioning, this is just a preliminary study. Now I come back to the actual applying of color. Whereas if I take, I've got a gray here, which I can use for the sky. So again, I'm just taking chances. I don't want to put it everywhere, and I want to put it on reasonably thinly as well. Maybe I'll put the red on at this point, or an orange. There we go. And you could get away with what I'm doing here for a preliminary plan, but I like the effect of it being washed around a little bit. Right, so I'll do that. And I think what I would now do to add interest is add a yellow. So I'm taking a chance, obviously, but that's why we do these preliminary pieces. So you can work out the problems in advance or an idea. So I leave that. Now I'm going to apply the water. I think I might go for a wider brush. Should have a wider brush somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Just dampen it, take the excess water off. Now, the idea is I keep reminding you just to work out the composition a bit more and the color scheme. Now we're the red of the sky. And I'm not trying to get everything perfect here. I'm just working on the idea. There we go. Down into the yellow area. I take that into the sky a little bit more. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's easy to forget. I'm just working out the ideas. Maybe if I came back with a bit more red to get a deeper red. Right. Bit more water. There we go. I just wanted the red to be a bit deeper, up into the grey. And that's fine, I think, for the moment. That's fine. I'll come down to the lake area because what it is, of course, in the lake is a repeat almost. Some yellow. So I'm also looking for harmony of color. So there's the lake for the moment. Then I got to deal with the snow. Well, I could keep the white of the paper. There is a white here, actually. I don't know how it will, probably won't add much, but I'll just give it a try. There's the white wax. I don't think it's going to have much of a result, but it's worth a try, isn't it? Exactly, yeah. Doesn't matter. I'm returning the white of the paper then to represent the snow. I can do these relatively quickly. Now I can come and sort of indicate across the horizon line those trees. So for that, I'm going to go for this brown. Same there. I was in two minds whether to go black. Maybe they won't be quite dark enough. So I'm going to put some black on as well. Oh, it does snap quite easily, as you can see. Because once again, it's easy to be, you pull back from doing from something because you don't want to spoil this, even though it's a preliminary piece. But this is the time to take chances. That's helped it straight away. I don't need to move it much, I don't think. Because I keep repeating. It's just to work out the composition. Back into the lake here. Clearly, I can probably go a little bit redder. Again. Yeah. Just had to check that the recording was on. Right, I don't need to spend too much time here. I can indicate now those haystacks. Just quickly. Right. So what I'm trying to do here is to sort of have almost bands of colour. So I'm not interested in depicting the landscape as we would capture it on a camera. I'll go now with a deep red for the sun itself. Now, I could probably just put this in and leave it, not add water. There we go. Or just slightly, maybe just slightly. There. And there may be a hint of that in here. Right. Now I need to indicate the hedges, as it were, defining the fields. So with that, I could let it dry or indeed take the hairdryer to it at this point and dry it off a little bit. Otherwise, again, just using the black, indicate. That's not black, it's purple. Yeah. Just taking some of the paper off it. All right. So I also got in my mind now abstraction as well. But I've got to give some consideration to these areas here, these fields, as against that sky. So what I could do is indicate reflections in the snow of a light red. So I'll try that. Now, what I haven't done, and I'll try it, I'll just experiment a little bit here, is dampening the paper and now stroke on the wax pen. Okay, but I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm reflecting this into the area. I can take some again up into there. And then finally into the foreground. So once again, I want to give the impression of snow, but the sun being reflected into it or onto it. It's almost like Rothko, who used to put bands of colour. Mark Rothko, you're all familiar with Mark Rothko. So the design is a little bit like that. So it's been limited palette. If I was now using oil paint or indeed acrylics, I would get the palette knife out. So that's my intention once I start to work up the idea a bit more, or indeed on the final version. So there's sketch number 1, done quite quickly. But have I convinced the viewer that might be a lake there? Possibly not. So, but that's not the critical thing at the moment. The critical thing is that I understand my intention here. Those trees are probably too far away to get me, but I can cheat. So what I'm going to do is to reflect these trees off in the distance. In reality, you wouldn't get a reflection into the water too far away. But of course, we're working semi-abstract, where there are no rules. So once again, just coming back into this location, and I'm going to put a reflection of those trees in. But as I just said, in reality, you wouldn't see a reflection too far away. So I'm just getting the idea of it, is to create a touch more interest in this location here. Now I'm doing this almost instinctively. There we go. I could take some of these trees a bit taller. That might work. In other words, bring this group of trees closer to the viewer. There. Now, as a preliminary study, that's okay. Very quickly then, taking the ideas from here, I'll move to a second one. I just adjust my board. Went the wrong way. So as just mentioned, I'm taking this idea from number 1 to number 2. And I just do 2 for this exercise, because I don't want to keep you too long. And I thought now on number 2, I'll bring the horizon down. Say to here. I'm going to make more of the sky. There are the trees. And retain the trees. Yes, the lake. So once again, this won't be the final study. I would continue doing them until I'm entirely happy and then commit myself to a finished painting. So I'm going to be a bit braver here and take a few more chances. And that's the lake, remember. Regarding the sun, I think I'll leave the sun out of it this time. I'm going to have a sunset still, but don't put the disk of the sun in. And I'll be reasonably quick as well. So back to the red. If we put the red, this section here, as I've mentioned, I won't put the disk of the sun in, but I do like the yellow, so I'll retain the yellow. Again. But what I also want to do is take it a touch more abstract. So I'm going to, no, maybe I'll leave that as it is, and then just brush the paint from there into the middle distance. But what do I do at the top of the sky? I had in mind maybe to add some blue. But I also had, I think it was a violet. Here it is. So I'm going to take a little bit more chance. I've not introduced the violet yet. But what I should do, which is always a good habit, of course, is just do a little test. with this violet before I commit myself. Well, on this occasion, I'll give the violet a try. Into the top of the sky. And now, of course, taking a chance, and this is where the courage comes into it, using a big brush, water onto the brush, and just stroke that. The violet. Now I'm going to clean the brush, get some more water on it for the middle band. Red. Blend the two together, possibly. There we go. Much more dramatic. Same with the yellow. Again, bring a little bit of the red into it. So I got 3 bands of colour. Now I'm going to take this into that distance there, that middle distance. So now I'm trying to work a bit more abstract, actually. So I'm adding more yellow. And I'm getting more of a feel now for the subject. Here, number 1, you always struggle because it's the first attempt. Good. Good. I stand back and have a look. Then I'll indicate those trees. I'll go with the black again. Go with the black. I could also dry it off at this point and add pastel to it. And then finally along here. Not sure about the tree, but remember, I'm just doing a study. But I do like the sky on this one. Maybe now bring the reflections from the sky onto the snow more in the foreground. So back to the red again. No, I don't really want to go stronger. I don't think it would work if I went stronger. So I have to be careful. Maybe on this one, I don't know now whether to make that into a lake or just a field. So you can see how when doing these studies, things will change. Then what color do I go here? I could replicate the violet to give it a bit more harmony, the colors. So the fact that it's a snowy landscape isn't the main thing I want to capture. It might revert back to that if I do a few more studies. Right, be a bit more abstract with the brush strokes. So all I'm doing is capturing the intention or the idea. With the haystacks, I might leave them out of the equation this time. The only thing I might do is just define the fields. Now I'm inclined again to go black. As I mentioned, I'll leave the lake out of it and make it into a field or fields. Same here. In a moment, I'm going to stop. Because remember, this is only study number 2. I'm just wondering whether I should indicate reflections using the violet. But of course, as I keep reminding you, just take chances, see how it happens. See what happens. Right. Okay, so I'm stepping back from it. And maybe with the violet again, indicate shadows from the hedges. Right. I'm going to stop at this one. So this is preliminary study number 2. So I've gone from number 1. And number 2, as you can see, I've refined the idea a bit more, taking it perhaps just a touch more again to an abstraction. And I might now take that idea into a third and possibly a fourth one. And I could, on the next 2, introduce paint, acrylic, is quick drying, to represent snow. So let's then assume I've done another number 3. I just want to speed up the process. So this could be number 3, okay? So I've got 1, 2, and then number 3. And I got number 3 to this point. And I got it in my head to apply some acrylic, okay? Remember, I'm still doing a study. Titanium white, Naples yellow, cadmium red. And I'm just going to smear paint with I could use a brush, but in my head, I think I'd rather do it with a palette knife. Even with my experience, you still get a little bit nervous, a bit apprehensive, because your brain is still is trying to tell you to consider it as a photograph. There we go. So I'm just taking chances again. That's the red. White the blade. Now I can pick up some Naples yellow into that foreground. Good. I wonder what would happen if I smear the Naples yellow into that red at that point. Oh, there we go. Right. And then, of course, to represent the snow, so remember, I'm working out the idea. And of course, at this point, the mark making becomes more effective. So I like that idea of using the palette knife to build up the snow. And this is number 3, remember. I know I'm using number 2, but as I just said, just to cut down on the time. Because in my final version, I rather like this idea of using the palette knife to apply the paint. To add the final touches to this, again, this preliminary study, I've decided to bring up the trees, and this time I'm using black. Now, obviously, I'm not too bothered about the strong contrast. That could, in one respect, help against the snow. There we go. Then, using the blade of the knife, pick out the hedgerows. I can't get at the paint because it should be on a flat palette, so I'm too lazy to find another palette. That's the reason. Okay. There we go. Now, suddenly, I like this idea. And equally, remember, I could be using a photograph, but it was still the same process as I'm teaching you here. So I'm not taking that any further, but I'm more excited now by this image here, this preliminary piece. And I feel I could quite happily take this and do a finished version from it. I know ideally I probably needed to do a couple more. So let me just take you through it. This was version number 1. Okay, done with the wax pastels. Then I took that idea into another version, and then I sort of went from version 2 to version 3. I know I worked on version 2 to complete version 3 just for convenience. But I rather like that idea. If I put a mount around it, there we go. And if I keep repeating, I've used this one of Joan Eardley's to get my version underway. I could do some tweaking within this, that's fine. So I'm going to leave it at this point. I simply want to just to guide you through what you can do if you're coming on Sunday or whether you want to practice this at home. Okay. So I'll leave it now. I'll say goodbye to you and see you all later.